let's start out chatting with each other, and I'll encourage y'all again to use respond to these to both the panelists and the attendees. But this is an interfaith event, right? Like it's in the title, Texas Interfaith Advocacy Days. And so for many of us, I know that it's our faith that encourages us to participate in this type of advocacy work. And so I'd love for you to post in the chat what from your faith tradition encourages you to spend your Saturday afternoon at an interfaith advocacy conference. Now, wait a second and look at some of these responses to come in. Justice is the foundational in the Christian faith. We are all related. From Anne, we are called to love others. All right, so I'm sure some more of those will come in and we'll check that out. But my guess is that many of you also have an issue that drives you. So I'm curious, what public policy issues really get you excited? Which issues would cause you to call your legislator or build a relationship with your representative or vote or support a candidate? What are those issues that really drive you? I'm sick of hearing far right about exclusion of others when Christ's message was about loving our neighbors. All are welcome in advocacy for justice in God's kingdom. All right, and we will continue to watch those come in, but the last question, in what ways have you participated in the policy process, from voting to serving as an election monitor to calling your legislator, to running for office, to supporting people who've done so, to inviting your legislator to visit your congregation? What kind of ways have you been engaged in the past? I'm seeing still some answers from the last question related to immigration reform, justice for the disenfranchised. Kathy's saying D, she's done all of the above, nice work. We had somebody run for local school board, knocked on doors. We have people who've been involved in community organizing. I know many of you are part of our rapid response team and legislative engagement groups, which we've talked about. I see responses on here about climate justice, social justice for the least of these. Oh man, I might quote that in a second. Let's see what else we have. All right, so it seems like many of you have been involved in the policy process. You certainly have issues that you care about, or I assume you wouldn't be on a Texas Interfaith Advocacy Days call at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. But I want us to remember as we go throughout this event why we do what we're doing. And for many of us, that is rooted in faith. And so for me, going back to the time when I was, you know, the age of my daughter now, a teenager, that idea from the Christian tradition related to Matthew 25, which talks about us being judged based on how we treat the least of these in society, specifically names the hungry, the thirsty, the sick, the imprisoned, those without clothes. And if we look around the world today, we have to recognize that we have hungry people still in our communities. And so we have work to do. We have sick people in our communities. And so we have work to do. I live in Huntsville, so I can attest to the fact that we have people who are imprisoned today. And so we have work to do. We have systemic racism. We have power grids that are failing. We have discrimination against women, against the LGBTQIA+ community. We have a climate in crisis. We have voting rights in need of protection. And as people of faith, we are called to respond. And the work that we're doing today and throughout the course of these days together, hopefully begins a journey that we will take to help address some of those needs, because we as people of faith are called to respond when people are hurting and when our communities need support. And if we use history as our guide, we know that every significant movement for social change has included people of faith. has included people of faith helping lead the way. And so this is our moment, especially here in the state of Texas. If we've seen anything in just the last few weeks, we've seen our systems of government need a little extra support, if that's a fair way to say that. We need here in the state of Texas to address the systems that oppress the least of these in society and that do people harm. And I'm confident the Texans of Faith will commit to doing that work. I am confident that the people who are on this call today, who will be a part of this event this week, will help do the work to change those systems. To put your faith into action, to change public policies, to ensure that the public policy that impacts our communities will reflect the faith of a creator that brings good news to the poor, proclaims relief to the captives, gives sight to the blind, and sets the oppressed free. And Texas Impact is your partner in that work. Is your partner in that work to make the world look a little more like Dr. King's beloved community. And as we are spending time in this session, as we're entering this legislative session, I want to talk about some of the tools and resources that Texas Impact has to equip your work, to equip the work of your congregation, to do this justice work, to bring about a more just Texas. And my hope is that you'll take in this information today and share that with your friends, your congregations, and invite them to join you in this journey. Because, y'all, I'm going to say this, I'm going to prepare you for this because I think it's the most important thing that I'll probably say today. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not entertainment that you can consume like cable news. We don't want you to come to this event so you can be an informed citizen. We want you to come to events. We want you to have these resources so you then take it with you to your broader community, to talk to your legislators and to engage people in this work for justice. Because let's be honest, it's a lot more fun when we're doing this with a group. So half credit if you do it yourself, but here's the deal. We now have about 500 people on our rapid response list. If every one of those 500 people made a telephone call when we asked them to, that'd be great. That'd be 500 calls. I expect that we'll probably make 10,000 plus telephone calls over the course of this legislative session. Heck, last week we generated about 500 calls over the course of 48 hours in response to the governor's undoing of the mask mandate. But what if the 500 people on the rapid response team each organized 10 friends in their legislative district to build a relationship with their legislator? What if every person at this event today found 10 friends who are willing to commit to building an actual relationship with their district office? What if everybody on this call today found 10 friends to help register people to vote, or to organize events around issues that you care about, trying to change the hearts and minds of people in your own community? We have to challenge ourselves to get outside of our comfort zones. Texas needs us, democracy needs us, disenfranchised and struggling Texas need us, and we have work to do. So let's talk about some of the resources that are available for you. And I want to talk about some of the history of Texas Impact's legislative engagement opportunities to catch you up to speed on where we are today. So in 2017, we founded the Rapid Response Team. And that's a list that of people who want us to email them or text them when their legislator needs a telephone call. And so we sent one out this week relating to the mask mandate. As legislative session moves on, we will text or email people when their representatives committees are having a hearing or when they need to hear from you about an important vote coming up. So our rapid response team was started in 2017. That same year, one of our Lutheran pastors, board member Franz Schemmel, decided that as a Lenten practice, he was going to show up at the Capitol every Monday and started encouraging other pastors to join him. So we started resourcing that effort, and every Monday during the legislative session in 2017, we had what we called Clergy Mondays, which has turned into our weekly witness program. That evolved in 2019 as Weekly Witness became a regular part of our programming. During that legislative session, we recorded the weekly podcast at First United Methodist Church of Austin, which is directly across the street from the Capitol. And so people would come, they'd get some information, and Jeff, who we'll talk to in a minute, was there for a lot of them. Kathy, haven't seen if Kathy's on yet today, but a handful of people attended most of those. And so would receive the information, then walk across the street. Other people throughout the state would get the information from Weekly Witness and then make telephone calls to their representatives Monday afternoons. And so Weekly Witness is now turned into weekly podcasts year round. And so I want to commend Weekly Witness to you. I want to commend the Rapid Response Team. Those are both important parts of our Texas Impact programming. And so as we move to 2021, the plan for this legislative session is that every Monday at noon, we'll have Weekly Witness live via Zoom at noon. And so you can register to attend those in person on Zoom and receive the information. Every week we'll have a weekly word from a Texas faith leader. We'll have a topic of the week. So this last week we talked about public health and COVID. The previous 2 weeks we talked about voting rights and the George Floyd Act. So we'll have the topic of the week. And then Josh Houston, who you'll meet later today or tomorrow, our advocacy director, will give us an action alert and a legislative update each week. So every week at noon, you can go to texasimpact.org in the Action Center and you can find our action alert for the week. And that'll have a list of bills or important priorities that will be covered during the week to come. If there are updates to that during the week, we'll send those updates to the Rapid Response Team. And so we hope everybody will consider participating in Weekly Witness and the Rapid Response Team. You can, sorry, I should also note, in addition to finding Weekly Witness live, you can find that in the podcast feed. So I'd encourage you to take your phones right now, go to your favorite podcast app and search for Texas Impact Weekly Witness and subscribe today. You can also find that via our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search for Texas Impact, and you can see previous episodes of Weekly Witness. Crystal noted before we went on that we currently have 953 people subscribed to our YouTube channel, and she would love for us to get to 1,000 by the end of this event. So everybody check your phone, check your computer now, make sure that you're subscribed to the Texas Impact YouTube channel. So Weekly Witness every Monday at noon, Action Alert in the Action Alert feed. But this session, we're asking for something more. We are asking you to be a part of a legislative engagement group. And so to explain why this is important, I want to play a quick clip from Weekly Witness a couple of weeks ago. This is a 5-term former state representative, Republican State Representative Sarah Davis, who joined us for a conversation about Medicaid expansion. And as part of that conversation, talked about the importance of building a relationship with our legislators. And so I'm going to play about a 4 to 5 minute clip of Representative Davis talking about the importance of your engagement. What advice can you give them about concrete steps that they can take during this legislative session to advance the cause?
So the first thing everyone needs to know is the first 60 days under a normal legislative session is dead time. We're not allowed constitutionally to take any votes. Committees aren't formed, or they are being formed, but they're not formed yet. Now we're in a different environment now with the pandemic. I think the House is out for a couple weeks, but this first 60 days is really when you need to be on the phone or on Zoom and contacting people, contacting your legislators. And don't forget about the Senate, because I can't tell you how many conversations I have with constituents over the last 10 years wanting, to make change, and I'm willing to help, but then have totally ignored the other chamber. And so we've got to, I always say, don't forget about the Senate. In the last session, we made some interesting headway. We actually passed legislation that allowed women to stay enrolled in Medicaid for a full year after she gives birth, as opposed to 60 days. Now, that did not go through in the Senate. But I thought that that was a great indication that we had some momentum, that there is growing understanding that we need to do more as a state. And I see a lot of focus on maternal mortality and morbidity. So I would say always advocate for Medicaid expansion. And I think you can familiarize yourself with some documents like the Episcopal Health Foundation has a great white paper about the economic impacts and how we can pay for it. I would read that and share that, and then share that with your legislators. Like I said, these first 60 days, they've got a lot of time on their hands. But even if you can't get to an actual elected, don't forget about the staff. The staff run the building. I mean, that's their full-time job. We are there for 140 days, and then, you know, we go home. And our staff, or the staff, is there making sure that things run. And I can't tell you how important developing relationships with the staff is, because they a lot of times help drive the policy decisions that are being made by you know, the particular elected official. I mean, I may have an idea like, I want to increase funding for substance abuse in this state, but, you know, I will have a staff do research and say, hey, you know, there's only 3 places that take you know, pregnant women and women with children, and that's the #1 reason why children are removed is substance abuse. Oh, so then let's focus resources on there. That wasn't my particular idea. That was staff working and working with advocates. So I say, don't discount the staff. In fact, sometimes they're way more important than the elected officials. But you know, I also appreciate when someone says we're going to have a meeting or a Zoom, and I receive a 1-page, you know, prep of what we're going to talk about. So that I can get my mind ready to engage in the conversation. And so you want to think about no more than 1 page, but I always think providing some initial information is very helpful, and always follow up. Because I usually would say I have to hear something and read something 3 times before it sticks. And so, you know, you want to be persistent. But also, what I have found to be effective is if you're going to approach a member and you're going to ask them to support something like Medicaid expansion or allowing women to stay on the rolls of Medicaid for 12 months, maybe take a look at some of their priorities and see if there are ways that you can offer to help them with their priorities. Can you write a letter, or can you get a group of people you know, to show support? So try and find a way to make yourself, you know, useful to the office, so that you're not just there with an ask, but you're also there with some help. Yeah, I would say that's a good strategy.
And we talk about that a lot, right? The relationship is actually important. You can't just make a telephone call and ask somebody to do something. That has to be a 2-way street. So first of all, that guy in that clip really needed a haircut post-COVID. But listen to what she said. They want to hear from you. As a former state representative, like, she knew the importance of building relationships with constituents, and not just her, right? Like, she wanted advocates, she wanted people to have a relationship with her office staff. They want that to be a 2-way street. They want to hear from you, and they hope that you'll be willing to listen to them and talk about other things that they're interested in. So that conversation is important. We can't just make a telephone call and ask them to do what we want to do. Get to know their staff. Know about their life, bring your experiences and resources, talk about what your congregations are doing in the community. Because in order for your representatives to best represent their communities, they need to hear from you about what you're doing and what your experiences in the community are. And y'all, this is a quick moment for an honesty check, because let's be real. I know that some of you in this presentation, that some of you in the Zoom right now are nervous about meeting with your legislators. Some of you are thinking, man, I'll make a call when you send it, but I'm not building a relationship with the representative or their staff. I know y'all, because I am y'all sometimes. And that's why Texas Impact has tried to identify ways to make it more comfortable and more accountable for you. And so Texas Impact created the legislative engagement groups, which just launched in the past year. But these groups were designed for two reasons. First, to form a group of advocates in a House district to hold each other accountable to doing the work, and also to make it more fun, right? Because advocacy is easier and much more enjoyable when we're doing it with another group of humans who care about the same types of issues that we care about. And so the legislative engagement groups were created to try to bring people from the same legislative district together and be accountable to meeting with each other once a month. And we have several LEG members on this call, and I think they'd back me up when I say that most of those meetings have lasted like 15 to 20 minutes. The second goal is for that group of people who come together to work to build a relationship with their elected representative, or at least their district office. So the original goal was that those groups would try to visit the district office once a month. During COVID times, we've tried to turn that, or we have turned that into Zoom meetings. And so getting together as a group once a month, getting together with your district office once a month. And to equip that work, Texas Impact will work to provide you resources. So during the interim, during the non-legislative part of the cycle, which in Texas is 75% of the time, we hosted monthly webinars to talk about various issues and talk about homework that we hoped that the LEGs would use to meet with their representatives during those monthly meetings. During the session, we're having a quick check-in every week after our noon weekly witness session. So those have usually lasted 15 to 30 minutes and just given folks a chance to talk about their specific representative and ask any questions about upcoming legislation.